All right, welcome back to the next week. And let's start the week with this study of chapter 15 of Bhagavatam. So we are up. Let's follow the stream up to this point. Let's see, how did we get to this point in the story? Okay, so the story begins where Bhagavatam wants to say what it is, wants to explain its history, or the speaker, Sutta, wants to answer the questioner's questions, wants to answer Shaunakas' questions by explaining the content of the Bhagavatam to him, because that would answer his questions. Before Shaunaka wants that to start, he wants to know about the Bhagavatam itself. So he asks about the three people that are involved in creating it: Vyas, Shukdev, and Parikshit. So we heard then about how and why Vyas wound up compiling the Bhagavatam. Then we heard about his son. Oh, we didn't actually hear yet about his son too much, Shukadev Goswami. Now we started hearing about Parikshit. But in order to tell about Shukadev and Parikshit, the narrator, Sutta, goes to the end of the Mahabharata war and starts telling the story from there forward, because Shuka and Parikshit are players in that story. And it sets the tale. It kind of roots the tale of the Bhagavatam in Krishna's avatar, which is important because that's what the Bhagavatam is about. So the way it gets rooted in Krishna's avatar is at the tail end of Krishna's avatar. This is where the Bhagavatam started. So we get I don't know if I deleted anybody's comments. I don't really want to get sidetracked on that. What was it? What was I saying? Can't get my brain back into the substance. Yeah, in order to root it, they're going to root the Bhagavatam in Krishna's avatar. I'm not insulting you. I'm sorry that you were insulted. I didn't do anything this week. This whole weekend, I didn't literally get on my computer, so I don't know what you're talking about. All right, Prashant. What's up, Fuzz? Okay, Prashant. Can I continue with the Bhagavatam, or do you have more complaints for me? If you're going to start complaining about me, you might as well stop listening, because you're going to have an endless list of complaints about me, because there's endless things to complain about. But just try to take the gold from the gold mine and don't get too upset that there's lots of dirt and dust in the gold mine. All right? So we want to know about where the Bhagavatam came from. To tell us about that, we need to know about Shukdev and Parikshit. To hear about Shukdev and Parikshit, we go back to the end of Krishna's appearance on the earth, and we tell the tale forward from that. All right? So the war ends. There's an assassination attempt on the princes. That is solved. There's an assassination attempt. There's an assassination of the princes. There's an assassination attempt on the youngest heir, still in the womb. That's solved. Krishna hangs out and helps in Hastinapur for a couple of more months. Then he goes back to Dwarka. And then some stuff happens in Hastinapur. Yudhishthira becomes the emperor. Durek comes back and says, hey, it's time for some people to get on with their lives, and it's done. We're leaving. So he gets the old king, blind king, to go and do yoga in the forest to leave his body. And Yudhishthira kind of freaks out because it's a hint that Krishna has left the planet. So he sends Arjuna to go see Krishna, come back with some news, but what's going on? Something seems weird. But months go by and Arjuna doesn't return from Dwarka. And then meanwhile, what we heard at the end of last week was meanwhile, the king starts seeing these really terrible omens. And we got a list of all these omens. And the omens indicate the onset of Kali Yuga. The onset of Kali Yuga indicates the disappearance of Krishna. So the king is a bit extremely disturbed. He's about to send Bhima to go check up on Arjuna, who's supposed to be checking up on Krishna, when he sees Arjuna returning super slowly. And then he starts questioning Arjuna, but Arjuna is just crying and can't answer. Now, finally, Arjuna in this chapter is going to answer. We're going to hear some heavy-duty stuff. All right, so this is chapter 15. Sadness dried his mouth and stole the luster from the lotus of his heart. Enwrapped in memory of his friend, dearer to him than his own life, Arjuna could not bring himself to answer the king. Finally, with great efforts, he stopped his uncontrollable sobbing, smearing the tears around his eyes with his hands. Pain grew deeper and deeper in him. Remembering his friend and companion. Let me just do one thing. Remembering his friend and companion, the well-wisher who had been his chariot driver and so much else, he turned to his eldest brother, the king, and spoke in stuttering and exploding words. So do you have that scene in your head? This Arjuna, the great, handsome warrior, is now smearing the tears around his eyes. Dirt is on his face. He's full of pain. He's going to try to speak, but he's going to be full of stutters and stops and explosions in his words, which I'm not going to try to imitate because it's going to get too dramatic. But then let's go and hear basically what he said. He said, "O Emperor, I am bereft of Hari, who had become our intimate relative, and without him, all of my astounding strength, which amazed even the gods, is gone." That's the summary of what he's going to say. Krishna's gone, and now that he's gone, everything is gone with him. We had all this power, we had all this strength, we had all this greatness, everything, but now that he's not here, it all disappeared with him. Just like a person's body is really valuable and important as long as they're in it. But after they're not in it anymore, it quickly becomes disgusting and terrible. And you have to get rid of it quickly, as we're now having a problem doing with so many people dying. So in the same way, the body it's the same body, it didn't change. But after the soul leaves it, it loses its powers. The same way, your whole life, if Bhagavan is a part of it, it becomes like alive. But if Bhagavan is not, it becomes like shut down. So that what Arjuna just said there is the basis of what's going on, but he's going to give you a lot more detail. Even for a moment without him, the whole world becomes ugly, like bodies bereft of life. Now, he's going to tell you some specifics which give you like a synopsis of Arjuna's life, actually. Some of the great things that he did. He said, "With Krishna, I strode into the palace where Draupadi was choosing her husband from all the princes who were smitten with her, and erased their hopes by shooting an arrow straight into the fish." So look at that amazing thing that I did, such a heroic thing. My wife, Draupadi, right? She was choosing her husband amongst from all these great warriors who were totally smitten with her, and I just walked in, did the challenge that nobody else could do perfectly, and she fell in love with me. With Krishna, I defeated all the immortals, arrested Indra, and handed the Khandava forest over to Agni. So Arjuna defeated the gods and arrested Indra, and took Indra was possessing the Khandava forest. So he took it back and gave it back to Agni, the fire god. Maya then built our wondrous assembly hall in which princes from every direction brought taxes and gifts to you. With Krishna, your great younger brother, who is as powerful as an army of elephants, he's talking about himself, freed all the kings from the madman who sacrificed to the Lord of Madness and collected royal skulls at his feet. So there was this real supervillain type of person around it. That's part of the external reason why Krishna appears at the end of Dwapara Yuga is to get rid of the supervillains, because people were very, very powerful in those days, and so yet they had become somewhat evil as well. So one of these guys had been worshiping the Lord of Madness and collecting royal skulls at his feet, and Arjuna just wiped him out. Then he says, remember when your wife, gloriously dressed with a beautiful hair knot, was caught in a terrible assembly of cheaters who tried to untie that knot while tears fell down her face? With Krishna, we turned their wives into widows with unkept hair. We got our revenge on that because Krishna was around. Remember when our enemies sent dangerous Durvasa with countless oh, this is a funny story. Remember when our enemy sent dangerous Durvasa with countless disciples to eat at our modest hut in the forest? Krishna protected us. He ate a morsel of leftover spinach and rice, and suddenly no one in the three worlds felt hungry. The sage and his disciples were satisfied before they even finished their best. I have to tell you the story because it's really funny. So what happened is Arjuna and his brothers were supposed to inherit the kingdom, but the blind king wanted his son to inherit the kingdom. So he refused to give it. Then the blind king's son made a bargain with them. I'll give you the five. Arjuna and his brothers said, that's okay, let's share it. And the blind king's son said, no. But if you can go into hiding for 12 years, and no, if you can live in the forest for 12 years and get out of my hair, then after you come back, I'll give you some villages. And they said, okay. They were into that. So, however, while they were in the forest, the blind king's son kept trying to kill them. And so this is one of the interesting ways that he tried to kill them. He tried to get them cursed by a great sage. So what he did was, Durvasa is famous for becoming angry really fast. He's a great sage, but he's got something to do with Shiva, so he's got some tamas. He's connected with the tama power, so he gets pretty angry. And for some reason, Durvasa came to the capital palace with a lot of disciples. And so the blind king's son said, oh, the Pandavas really want to greet you and meet you, and they're out in the forest right now. Go see them. They would be really happy. Knowing that there's no way that that Draupadi could possibly take care of feeding all these people. They live in the forest. They barely have enough to eat themselves, right? So that would make them kind of cranky, and they would get angry at the Pandavas and curse them. But what happened is, that Krishna asked for I don't know this all on the details, actually, I forgot. What happened is at the end, Krishna ate a little bit of what was left over. And then because he's the universal soul of everybody, when he felt satisfied, all the sages felt satisfied. And they were like, thank you, this was great. And they left. And then also as a result, Draupadi wound up with a magic pot, which erased all their problems for foods. The magic pot was that as long as she didn't eat, she could keep taking food out of the pot. It wouldn't run out. And then once she ate, then the pot would be finished. Ah, that's right. She had this pot, and then he made sure that they showed up late. The blind king's son made sure they showed up late after she ate. So it was a real mess. All right, anyway, back to the sad story. So Arjuna said, look, Krishna helped us out with all this stuff. And I said, because of Krishna, I even once fought Shiva, the blessed trident wielder. So Arjuna actually defeated all the gods and defeated Indra, and once he even fought Shiva. My skill astonished him and his wife so much that he gave me the secret of his own weapon, and the other gods followed suit. As a result, I could enter the house of Indra, king of paradise, even with my mortal body, and share his throne. So look at this amazing stuff impossible stuff that I did. While I was there, Indra and the gods took refuge of my strong arms, which hold the Gandiva bow, and protected them. And I protected them from their enemy because I was empowered by Krishna. This human goes to paradise, and then the gods ask him for help, and he protects them. Well, that's totally backwards. So all this stuff was possible, Arjuna is saying, because Krishna was around. But now, he says, I am robbed of him. With Krishna, I was invincible and single-handedly traversed the unsurpassable ocean of the Kuru's strength to retrieve the treasures they stole and claim the dazzling jeweled crowns from their heads. An enormous phalanx of great warriors and fine chariots encircled Bhishma, Karna, my guru, and Shalya, and I went straight into it with Krishna at my side, and his glance deflated all their strength, enthusiasm, and longevity. Because of his protection, their terrible weapons had no effect on me, just as the demons could not even scratch the boy Nrsinga protected. In our unusual relationship, he became my chariot driver, although he's the supreme master, the soul savior, and the wise who seek liberation worship even his feet. By his blessing, I had no fears when my horses became thirsty and I had to stand on the ground during war. So that all sometimes happens. Your horses run out of strength. Then you can't ride on the chariot anymore. Now you're pretty weak. Now you're in a lot of trouble. Arjuna didn't mind because Krishna was around. Then he gets to some more personal things rather than just the great heroic things that happen. He said, we joked and jested so delightfully, beautified by his smile. Hey, cousin. Hey, my friend Arjuna. Hey, Kuru's son. Oh, these conversations touched my very heart. My soul floods with memories of sweet Krishna. We were always inseparable, sleeping, sitting, walking, eating, and boasting together. When one of us misbehaved, the other would sarcastically say, oh my, what an ideal person you are. Krishna, the greatest of the great, tolerated my awfully familiar attitude just as a father tolerates a child or friends tolerate one another. And this is very important. This is very important. If you understand one thing about Arjuna and Krishna, it's how Krishna likes to become intimate and doesn't like to stay in a official or superior position. He's looking for opportunities to become intimate and friendly. No, you just have to have minimal qualifications for it so that you're not an ass. If you're an ass, then nobody wants to be your friend. So it's pretty sensitive, however, when you get to people who really are not asses at all. So when you get to somebody like Krishna, you have to have a certain quality of heart, which is very unselfish. And then he's very happy, and he comes to that heart and to find a friend. Just like everybody else, all consciousness wants to be together. The supreme consciousness also wants to be a friend. So he's very happy, even though he's super Mr. Number One and all that stuff, he likes to become a friend. Without him, Arjuna continues, that supreme person, my friend, my beloved, my well-wisher, my very soul becomes vacant and void. Now he's going to tell Yudhishthira what happened. And now he's already telling him that he's gone. Now he's going to tell him some detail. It says, recently, Recently, I was guarding. So Krishna has left. So all of his wives became widows. So Arjuna was trying to protect them. Recently, I was guarding Krishna's queens, but I was attacked. Guess who? Guess by who? Some great demon or something. By farmers. I was attacked by farmers, and they defeated me as easily as if I was a little girl. I have the same bow, the same arrows, the same chariot, and the same horses. I am the same man whom great warriors praised. But without Krishna, everything has lost its power. I have become like play money, like a sacrifice offered to ashes, like a seed in the desert. Sutta said, Arjuna now became very stoic, and the words fell like stones from his mouth. Arjuna said, King, you asked about our well-wishers in their great city. Here's the news. Now this is where you're going to hear how it went at the end. Here's the news. They got so drunk that they couldn't even recognize each other. An argument broke out, and they wound up killing each other. Only 4 or 5 survived. So the whole family of Krishna and Dwarka killed each other. What? Well, how are they going to leave the world? They're warriors, first of all, and then second of all, how are they going to leave the world? Nobody can kill them. So they got drunk and killed each other. Only 4 or 5 survived. 4 or 5 did survive. Out of thousands. Perhaps it was a curse, Arjuna said. But it seems more like the will of the all-powerful master, by which living beings sometimes want to kill each other, but at other times want to protect each other. The big fish eats the small fish, the strong eats the weak. Such are the ways of providence, and such was the manner in which the stronger Yadus killed the weaker ones, erasing themselves from the face of the earth. There's nothing left for me but to remember the great wisdom Govinda spoke to me on the verge of battle, for that wisdom always extinguishes the flames of pain. Now he's talking about Bhagavad-gita. He says, there's nothing left for me to do except to remember that conversation that I had with Krishna, because that's full of wisdom and it always gets rid of pain. My mind is so drawn to remembering what Govinda explained to me, it extinguishes the flame of pain in any situation. Sutta said, as Arjuna remembered the Bhagavad-gita, his mind became pure and peaceful, embracing the lotus-like feet of Krishna with deep intimacy and extreme friendship. Continuously meditating upon those feet, Arjuna's divine love expanded rapidly as his troubled thoughts shrunk. He had become eclipsed by darkness, but once again he gained self-control through the wisdom that was sung by the all-attractive in the midst of the war. So that's what happens. So these people in this story, they can actually interact with Krishna in the external tangible world. But when they can't, they revert to doing things that we usually do to try to access Krishna, which is meditation or contemplation. So you saw that when Krishna left Dwarka, his wives in Dwarka just started to meditate and they didn't do anything else. And also now Arjuna, he's just all that he could do is meditate on Bhagavad-gita, what he heard from Krishna, and doing so relieves his pain. Freed now from grief and spiritually inspired, he completely cut off all the dualistic doubts and dissolved them into the energy that is unqualified by shapes and manifestations. That means, this is a short way of saying Arjuna finished his life. This is short, like it's not like he did it on the spot, but it's a summary of what happened. Then it says, when Kunti heard Arjuna's news, she immediately ended her material existence with undeviating and nakedly soulful divine love for the transcendent all attractive. So Kunti also said, that's it for me, I'm done. And she died. King Yudhishthira was also extremely troubled. King Yudhishthira has to hang around a little bit longer because he's the emperor. He's got duties to tie up. He was extremely troubled about the destruction of the Yadu family and the road taken by the all-attractive. By the way, you'll hear more about these stories. Feeling terribly alone, he made up his mind to follow the same road himself. Now, here's some detail about it. About how they all did this. Sometimes one uses a thorn to take out a thorn, and in the end throws both away. Similarly, the unborn took a body to remove the burdens of the world and then discarded both. It's a great sentence, isn't it? Sometimes one uses a thorn to take out a thorn. If you get a thorn stuck in you, you need like tweezers. But if you don't have tweezers, you could take another sharp thing, like another thorn, and pick the thorn out. And then you throw both of them away. Similarly, there was a thorn in the world of all these heavily armed kings. And so Krishna became a heavily armed king and got rid of him and then left. Like a magician, he takes the forms of a fish and so on. His famous avatars as fish and etc. Then, when they have relieved the burdens of the world, those forms disappear. The form of the all-attractive liberator is the subject of spiritual discussion and celebration. And when it disappeared, right then and there, Kali appeared, causing ill fortune and underdevelopment of the mind and intellect. So this is two qualities of Kali Yuga, is that the human mind and intellect is not as developed. This is probably why scientists talk about how the percentage that we use of our brains is not nearly full. There's something wrong about the way the neurons get connected in this yuga. And it might be connected, I'm just speculating, it might be connected to the fact that the earth in Kali Yuga also produces less nutrition. I don't know for sure. But the thing that you know for sure is that in Kali Yuga, there's ill fortune because of underdevelopment of mind and intellect. Yudhishthira could already sense that the Kali serpent had crawled into his city and into his state and into his home and even into his own self. He saw greed, falsehood, trickery, violence, and so on forming a crushing wheel of immortality, so he made ready to leave. He educated his grandnephew, that's Parikshit, to be as qualified as him, and enthroned him to reign in the capital as the emperor of all the earth bordered by the seas. So he became the emperor of Bharata. Then he made Vajra. Now who's Vajra? He made Vajra the king of Surasena. Vajra is one of the 4 or 5. He was a grandson of Krishna. He survived when the rest of the family decimated themselves. So Yudhishthira, before leaving, he made his grandson Parikshit the emperor, and he made Vajra, Krishna's grandson, the king of the province of Surasena in Mathura, which is Krishna's zone, as a teenager. It was Krishna's favorite area. Having fulfilled his duties as a householder, then Yudhishthira became capable to follow the inner fire. This is an important point. You're not capable, or you don't have adhikar, or the right to follow the path of a renunciate if you haven't fulfilled your duties first. Letting go of everything, like his exquisite clothing and jewelry, he lost all sense of selfishness and possessiveness. He completely severed himself from his unlimited relationships to the world. He then became silent, sacrificing all his words into his mind. He then stilled his mind, sacrificing it into your breath. So this is what you do. Let me just finish reading this. As per Shastra, Prashant Bhakti says there is no Kali Yuga. Well, this is Shastra, and they just said it's Kali Yuga, so I don't know what you're talking about. So this is what you do. Letting go of everything like his exquisite clothing and jewelry, he lost all sense of selfishness and possessiveness. He completely severed himself from his unlimited relationships to the world. He then became silent, sacrificing all his words into his mind. He then stilled his mind, sacrificing it into his breath. He then pressed that breath downward into death and sacrificed it into the 5 elements. The 5 he wisely sacrificed into the triplicate, and that into the singular. All of these together as one self, he sacrificed into the spiritual self, which is inexhaustible. So here's a mystical diagram of how yogis technically achieve moksha. Hey Sarah. Nice to see you. So what you do is you start by getting rid of your possessions. And then you cease your activities. So what you do is by ceasing activities, you let go of your possessions. Then you cease activities by ceasing to speak to anybody. That's the most effective way to cut out your activities. So you sacrifice your activities into your speech. Then the way that you stop speaking is that you only think. So that you sacrifice your words into your mind. And then it goes on to say what? You have to, the way that you stop thinking is by concentrating on your breathing. So you sacrifice your thoughts into your breath. Then when you're focused, so now your whole existence, just like right now, our whole existence is like scattered out into so many things, activities and people and places. But in this way, the yogi pulls their being more and more compact back into themselves. So when you get it down to the breath, where your whole concentration of your being is in your breath, then you can move your breath around. So what he did is you push the breath down, and that's how you can die. So it says he pushes it down into death. Now, when you're dead, you still exist, and you're still actually wrapped with prana, and you're still a mental entity wrapped in prana. So you still have work to do. So here it says you have to sacrifice your breath into the elements of nature itself. The 5 elements: earth, water, fire, air, space. The 5 elements are produced by something called a triplicate, which is sattvas, rajas, and tamas. So then when all of your identity is focused into the 5 elements that are constitutional to making everything, like your mind and your, doesn't make your mind, but like when it makes all the prana and everything, which is the root of everything else, then you sacrifice that into the 3. Obviously, I have no personal experience of this, so my explanation of it is less clear. But you sacrifice that into the 3 modes, and then the 3 modes come from something called a singularity. So there's 5, 3, 1. Once you get the life air out of the body, then you have to deal with 5, 3, and 1. You take the life air and you merge it into 5 elements. Then you take the 5 elements, you merge them into the 3 gunas. Then you take the 3 gunas and you merge it into the 1 mahat, which is the singularity. The singularity is the way that consciousness manifests the tangible reality. So once you can do that, all of these together as one self is sacrificed into the spiritual self, which is inexhaustible. So to the inexhaustible spiritual self means there's nothing further to sacrifice anything into. It's the origin. So the singularity then sacrifices or merges into the conscious being. So that's what Yudhishthira did. So here's some more detail. He dressed in rags, stopped eating, speaking, and caring for his appearance, and began to see his spiritual form. He did not listen. That's interesting. He began to see his spiritual form. He did not listen to anyone or anything. Like an uncultured and insane demon, he waited for nothing and relied on no one. He set out northward, following the great souls who had gone before him for the same reasons. With no concept of time, he went forward, wrapped in meditation upon the Supreme Spirit within his heart. All of his brothers decisively followed him. They all did the same thing, having seen that the immorality of Kali Yuga had embraced the relations of all the people of earth. They had done everything saintly and accomplished everything worldly. They knew the ultimate destination and origin of the soul, so their minds had always embraced the lotus feet of the tranquil. That's the word for Bhagavan, the tranquil. This singular loving meditation liberated them into completely pure transcendental consciousness and carried them to their destination, Narayan's feet. They attained what is unattainable. Cleansed of the pollution of temporary, unreal, exploitive self-concepts, they went to the place beyond the Viraja river without changing their identities. Uncle Vidura also completely renounced. So that's the 5 Pandavas. That's how they left the world. Just doing this sannyas and walking north. When the Krishna was around, they were fully engaged in life, but when he was gone, they were like, we're gone. Uncle Vidura did the same thing. He also completely renounced his material self in a place called Prabhas. His thoughts, like clothes wrapped around Krishna, he went to his own station surrounded by the Pitri. But he didn't go to Vaikuntha because he is Yama. So he went back to being Yama. Queen Draupadi, too, fully aware that her husbands would no longer take care of her, gave her undivided attention to the all-attractive son of Vasudeva and went to him. So she went also. If this story attracts you, you too will become pure and fortunate just by listening to it. It says, you too will attain perfected divine love for Hari. That's the end of the chapter. So we actually get to the end of it's a milestone in the story, because now all the backstory to Parikshit and Shukadeva is finished. So now you can actually start to hear about Parikshit directly himself. So the next thing you're going to hear about is how Parikshit was the emperor and how he interacted with Kali, with the personified form of Kali Yuga, who was visible to him at the onset of the Kali Yuga. So that'll be tomorrow. Any last questions or anything there? Apparently there's only one person on Facebook. So anyway, any last questions anywhere? Thanks, Kitty. Well, I'll come back tomorrow. We'll get back tomorrow. We'll get back to this. Thanks so much. See you tomorrow.